In 2001, the New York Mets were building a franchise around a crop of young players. David Wright at third base, Jose Reyes at short,
360 spin and got it.
And in the outfield, they wanted Brian Cole, a former Meridian High School baseball and football phenomenon who still leaves those who remember him in awe.
I may have had some other athletes who were as talented, but no way did they use what they had the way that he did. A single to him was like a double, because he was on still second base.
He did things at his size that no other ordinary athlete could do. He surprised a lot of folks around here in Meridian and all over the world, I guess. And he wasn't but 5'9" and 170 pounds, so what he did kind of shocked everybody.
The Queen City watched as Brian hit 22 home runs with a .495 batting average in the spring of 1997. The Mets took him in the 36th round of the MLB draft, concerned about his small stature. But Brian mesmerized everyone. He hit 42 home runs, 193 doubles, and had 135 stolen bases while working through the Mets organization. In 2000, he was honored in Shea Stadium as the program's Player of the Year. But on March 31, 2001, Brian was driving from the Mets Farm Club in Port St. Lucie to see family in Meridian. A car abruptly entered his lane, and in an effort to avoid collision, he lost control of his Ford Explorer. He was pronounced dead in Jackson County Hospital 3 hours later. But almost 10 years later, his legend caught the attention of Sports Illustrated writer Michael McKnight, who had heard about Cole from his friend Michael Ribaldo, one of Brian's old teammates.
And I got on the phone with the Yankees, and I said, look, I'm doing some background research on a story for the magazine about a player named Brian Cole. CC Sabathia played against him. And the next day, Lewis, I get a call from CC Sabathia, and that never happened. Here's the best left-handed pitcher of our generation telling me that he's the best player he's ever seen.
McKnight traveled from Southern California to Meridian, and 13 years after his death, Brian Cole's face appeared in Sports Illustrated, bringing out stories from all over the Queen City that had McKnight and many others believing this Meridian son is the best baseball player you never saw. When following in the footsteps of former Meridian baseball phenomenon Brian Cole, you'll hear so many incredible stories they almost sound like they can't be real. Author and Sports Illustrated writer Michael McKnight discovered this when he traveled to the Queen City.
One of Brian's really good friends in the Mets organization, Brian Jenkins, who's mentioned in the Sports Illustrated story, told me that he saw Brian hit a home run in A-ball. The pitch skipped on its way to the home plate. And I'm like, sure, of course we're inclined not to believe that. But then when I hear 3 or 4 other players corroborate it, it's just, it sounds like fiction.
But even members of the Cole family recall his legendary plays.
In high school, when he was, I think, 10th grade, maybe somewhere around there, we were up in Starkville, and Starkville's field has the field and like trees behind it. Then it's got a transformer way behind those trees, and he knocked one of those transformers out. So I saw that with my own eyes.
Mac Barnes was Brian's football coach and the Meridian High athletic director in 1997.
Brian played against the best pitcher in the state, and I think it was his senior year in Pascagoula. The guy went to Florida State. And Brian struck out one time, hit a double, and hit a home run. The big thing in the article prior to the game was the guy not giving up a home run all year. Brian smoked it. I think that's the only 2 hits we got.
Coach Barnes saw it on the football field as well, telling us that Brian was upset for getting just 4 carries in a win over Starkville one Friday. Eager to make a statement, he scored 5 touchdowns against Hattiesburg the next week. And stories like these are why Albert Pujols and CC Sabathia both called him the best player you never saw. Former Diamondbacks all-star pitcher Heath Bell said he was the greatest player he'd ever seen. But there was one story we found in McKnight's article that was so mind-blowing, we went to Cheyenne Trussell Park to see for ourselves. When chronicling the journey of the late Meridian Wildcat and rising New York Mets star Brian Cole, Sports Illustrated writer Michael McKnight opened with a story from Cheyenne Trussell Field. The year was 1994. Major League Baseball was on strike, and Brian's older brother Greg and a group of professionals were trying to stay loose. Tagging along with his older brother, a 5'4", 130-pound Brian stepped into the batter's box against Cincinnati Reds reliever Johnny Ruffin. roughing through a 92-mile-per-hour slider, and Brian knocked it out of the park. He was 15 years old.
He was just a natural man. We really didn't do any whole lot of drills. We'd be up from sun up to sundown just outside playing, and whatever we did, he did the same thing.
It was at this field that Brian became the great ball player he was. But because he died at just 22, there are so many who don't realize he left many of today's greatest all-stars in awe. Even at WTOK, this footage is all we have of Brian. And when we found him, he didn't disappoint us.
You know, most kids hated practice, but he always found something jubilant about practice. And he was a mischievous little guy. You know, he just was like a kid. He loved to play. He was playful, but when it came down to business, he was all business.
Mr. Trussell spotted me on his field, and when we spoke, he too remembered Brian. His friend Ida McFarland just happened to have baseball cards that Brian's mother gave to her. And although it's a sad story, those who loved Brian soldier on.
The one thing that sticks out to me is Brian's family. They're very buoyant, and they're happy people, and they're loving people, and they're people of faith. Just really, really remarkable people.
And a lot of people still now are trying to emulate things that he did when he was a player, which is hard to do. But you know, as long as you know other people still recognize what he done and what he meant, it's still going to be within us.
To some, Brian Cole may be legendary, but to Meridian, he was as real as can be. Louis Montesi, News Center 11.